Hey guys, for today's VEDA, I'm going to do something special. I recently found a site called IUsedToBelieve.com that's dedicated to grown-ups sharing things they used to believe as kids, and a lot of them are really hilarious. So I've spent a few months coming up with my own, and I figured VEDA was a great time to put them all together. I hope you enjoy.
When I was little, I thought this old man was dis old man, and the only man I could think of was a snowman. So naturally, I pictured a snowman literally rolling up to my back door that looked like a cross between a snowman and the planter's peanut. The first time I heard the word mediocre, I thought it was meat yoker, and so I assumed it was some kind of weird meatloaf with eggs in it.
When I was in first grade, there was a kid in my class named Jesse, and because of his ambiguously long haircut and looks, I couldn't tell if he was a boy or girl for half the year. I only found out he was a boy when we were in PE and had to go split into boys versus girls. I assumed he was a girl because I have a cousin named Jessica, and her nickname was Jessie.
When I was little, I thought the word Edelweiss was some sort of weird ice tray, because ice was the only part of the word that I recognized.
My mom has scoliosis and had her spine fused when she was 16 years old by way of a rod actually hammered into her spine. When she described the long scar and the procedure to me when I was older, I pictured her sitting upright on the operating table and the doctor just like opening the back of her back like a door and having it be hollow and him actually climbing inside and fixing her spine.
When I was little, my parents drove a stick shift, and when they switched gears, I thought they were just wiggling around the gear shift for fun. When I was little, my mom would bake some sort of sweet that used evaporated milk. The brand was called PET, and so I called it pet juice. One day in first grade, we had to write a recipe, and I used that one, and so I put pet juice. My teacher had no clue what I was talking about and had to ask my mom. Thankfully, she knew what I was on about.
When I was little and I would choke on food and my mom would tell me it went down the wrong pipe, I thought that liquids went down the right side of my throat and that food went down the left side of my throat and that the uvula is what separated the two. And so I would try to like swallow more on one side of my throat versus the other until I figured it out in anatomy class much later that they're actually side by side like that, front to back.
When I was little, I was scared of peeing on these because I thought I would fall in.
When I was little, I thought that scone was a portmanteau for snow cone, and I was bitterly disappointed to find out that it was not a snow cone, that it was some kind of biscuit.
When I was 4, I got hit in the face with a dishwasher door, and it left a really bloody gash. I thought that if the blood ran into my eye, that I was gonna go blind.
When I was little, I thought that that horrible beep that phones made when you left them off the hook meant that you had to dial a number. And so I sometimes would purposely get it to go to that sound, and then I would go dial a number and just like press random numbers. My mom noticed and she got mad.
When I was little, I thought the word phenomenon was phenomenom.
I was at a park when I was little, and some older kid was reading some of the graffiti that had been written on one of the towers. One of the pieces of graffiti that he read out loud said, "There's a toilet plunge up my three-letter word that means butt." But instead of saying that word, he spelled it out. So he said, "There's a toilet plunge up my ass." So I thought that was an abbreviation for something, and I assumed that that was a perfectly normal word for butt.
Up until the time I was about 13 years old, I thought that a laxative was a sleep aid because lax, relax, laxative. I didn't realize this until I told my mom I needed a laxative. She laughed at me. When Kian was little, she thought aqua sock was apple sock.
In Oregon, the speed limit is 10 miles slower for semi-trucks, but all it says is speed limit 65, trucks 55, so I thought that if we drove to Oregon in my dad's truck, we'd have to go slower than if we took the Subaru.
When I was little, I thought Lady and the Tramp was about a girl and her trampoline.
When I was in fifth grade, Jinx was really popular, and not having any older siblings that did stuff like that, I was completely clueless as to what it was, and so I thought it had to do with Jar Jar Binks.
I weighed 9 pounds when I was born, and so for most of my childhood, I thought that 9 pounds was standard birth weight and that anything less was subpar.
One time on a rural road, I thought I saw a horse butt sticking out of some dirt on the side of a ditch, which was probably just an empty milk jug or something. And every time that we'd drive by, I'd always look for the butt end of the horse that dove headfirst into the mud and died.
When I was little, I often wondered how in the world cars knew when to go into reverse.
Since my kindergarten class was on a completely different schedule from the rest of the school, we all had a heck of a time trying to figure out what the beep meant for recess. And so we concluded that it was the light from the fish tank because it was blinking.
Wondering where babies came from as a child, I thought that I came packaged like an action figure and that my parents got me at Sears.
I thought that the air vents that I sometimes saw on roofs were giant mushrooms that had taken root on a shingle.
My aunt had 2 cats. One of them was named Yevgeny, and I thought her name was Gidevgeny, and the other one was named Natasha, and I thought her name was Matasha.
When I was little, I convinced my mom that there was a Narnia-style portal in our spare bedroom closet, and that I had an identical twin sister named Dana. And so I would go get Dana and have her come say hi to my mom, and she totally fell for it, or so I thought. I later found out she didn't actually fall for it. But I felt so bad that she believed me that I confessed to her that I made the whole thing up because I didn't want her to feel bad that she fell for it.
When I was little, I thought everyone had relatives with the same name as mine, so one day in preschool when somebody's uncle came to pick her up, I turned to her and I said, "Hey, your Scott's here!"
One day my dad was petting the neighborhood cat, and I swear that when the cat rolled over and my dad rubbed his tummy, the cat actually went ha 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 and laughed like that.
When I was 8, I thought that when I burped or yelled or talked with my mouth closed, no one could hear me.
For all the medical people out there, I thought that you could see down into the lungs of somebody that had a trach. It didn't really occur to me that there was like a 90-degree angle, so you really couldn't see anything.
I grew up in a really open family, so I occasionally saw my older cousin, who was a boy, without pants on. And I noticed that sometimes his balls were like really shriveled up and sometimes his balls were quite large. So, not growing up around many young boys, I came to the conclusion that his testicles was where his bladder was, and that when his balls were shriveled up, it meant that he had just peed, and when his balls were large, it meant that he had to pee really bad.